and welcome to my December film, TV and music wrap up. So December happened, which means it was Christmas, which means I had so much time to watch stuff. So let's get into exactly what I watched and what I was listening to. First thing I have to mention is Mortal Engines, which came out on Netflix. So I decided to give it a watch. I have been wanting to watch this film for a very long time now. So it came out on Netflix and I decided to give it a go. I've got to admit it was quite sort of generic sci-fi in its own way, but I still did really enjoy myself. The cast was really solid, the story was really solid, I really liked the steampunk vibe of it, and it was just generally a good time. I then also continued on with Deep Space Nine, and yes, I'm still working my way through Deep Space Nine and I'm still not past Series 2 yet, but at the moment I'm only 3 episodes away, so I am definitely making it. But Deep Space Nine is definitely not my favourite Star Trek. I do find it a lot slower than I usually would compared to, say, Next Generation. I am finding it a bit slower, but I'm still quite enjoying myself. I mainly am here for Bashir and Odo and Quark, to be honest. They are my favourite characters of the lot, and it's not as good as I was hoping it was going to be, but I am still enjoying myself, and I am just basically just sort of watching it, A, whenever I feel like it, and B, just sort of whenever there's nothing else on, I go to DS9. So it's good in that sense. It's just definitely not my favourite Star Trek. I think Next Gen is going to remain my favourite. We also ended up watching The Witcher, and I thoroughly enjoyed the series, and I think it's now going to become a Christmas tradition to basically just watch The Witcher every year at Christmas, because it came out at Christmas last year. We ended up watching it twice on the week of Christmas, including for the second time round on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day last year. So I'm probably going to be doing that every single year. Maybe not on Christmas Day itself, but in the week leading up to Christmas I will be watching The Witcher, and I am not sorry because I really enjoy it as a TV show. It's really solid as a TV show. I really like the plot twists of it, like the multiple timelines elements of it. I love the monsters, the storylines. It's such a good TV show. Even if it does have its problematic elements, I will admit, but I still really enjoy it, and I am very glad I rewatched it because I had a great time. The Shows Must Go On also then uploaded the Kinky Boost musical onto their YouTube channel, so I decided to give it a watch because I've never really watched it before. I've seen clips from the film with Chiwetel Ejiofor, and that's about it. So I had a really good time watching this. Actually, I had no expectations going into this. I didn't really know anything about the storyline. The only thing I really knew about this show was the fact that Brendan Urie was in the Broadway version. That was about it. And I ended up really enjoying myself watching this. I loved the songs, I loved the message, I loved the storyline. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I was laughing out loud the whole way through. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I am now desperate to see it on the West End whenever the West End opens again, and whenever it comes back to the West End, though if it also does a touring show I will definitely go and see it when it's safe again. And I just generally really enjoyed this musical. BBC One then aired Spiderman Homecoming, so naturally I ended up watching it because if BBC show any Marvel film, I will watch it immediately. So naturally I ended up watching this one and absolutely loving it, like I always do. I know that Tom Holland isn't everyone's favourite Spider-Man, but he's definitely my favourite Spider-Man because he made me like Spider-Man. I've never liked Spider-Man in my life, but the second he said, "Mr. Stark, I cannot go to Germany, I have homework," I was in love with him, not gonna lie, and that hasn't changed ever since. And Homecoming definitely really sort of solidifies that for me. I've got to admit, I love him in this film. He is absolutely brilliant. I love the storyline of it. I love how it explores more of Peter and Tony's relationship and just generally Peter's world and how Peter is Spider-Man and everything. I really enjoy all of these elements. I love the plot twists of it. I'm generally biased towards this film, I've got to admit, but I just loved it, as I always do. Also, because it was Christmas, I ended up watching The Hogfather like I do every single year, because it is the adaptation of the Terry Pratchett book The Hogfather, and I still love this show. I absolutely love this special. It's one of the greatest things I've ever watched. It's my favourite Christmas tradition to just sit and watch it on Christmas Eve night when it's set. I absolutely love it. I think it's brilliant. I just I love quoting along with it. I can quote along to so much of it, especially the "have you been naughty or nice, ho ho ho" moment. I love that moment. And also the "of course there's something that makes a noise, what else is 4:30 a.m. for?" I love these moments. I love how much it explores Death and Susan's relationship and just generally everything about Hogswatch and everything else. I love this series. I think it's brilliant and I highly recommend it. It also wouldn't be Christmas unless I watched The Grinch, so naturally I also ended up watching The Grinch. It's one of the most relatable movies I've ever watched because I am the Grinch in so many ways. I am the Grinch. It hits about November 30th and I go full Grinch mode and I just slowly turn more and more green as we get towards Christmas, and it just doesn't go away until like January the 1st. And this year was no different. I'm still a Grinch. I'm not fond of Christmas. I'm not as bad as the Grinch, but I still fully understand where he's coming from with all of it. I would also react like he did if I lived in Whoville, without doubt. And I just love this film. It makes me laugh every single time and I just love it. I also watched The Man Who Invented Christmas to sort of finish off our Christmas, and I've got to admit I am not a fan of biopics. I usually hate biopics with a passion. I find them really, really boring, and I'm just generally not here for biopics. I'm generally more here for more action, fantasy, sci-fi, that kind of thing. So it wasn't very usual for me to be watching this, but I do absolutely love this film. One, because I love Dan Stevens as an actor. I think he's absolutely brilliant. Admittedly, he is my Legion, but we'll move on. And he's also my Beast, but that's beside the point. I think Dan Stevens kills it in this role. I really like how relatable it is in terms of just trying to get anything done and getting interrupted every 5 minutes, even when you're in the flow of it, which is worse than getting interrupted when you're just starting. Totally get that. I love like the story of it. I do just generally think it's a very, very good movie and a very underrated Christmas one as well. I'm not usually one for Christmas films, but this is brilliant and I cannot recommend it enough. And that was it for our Christmassy films, and then we went on to watching The Old Guard because I've only watched it once before now and I just really wanted to watch it again. So we watched The Old Guard and it's still as brilliant as it was the first time around. Charlize Theron and the rest of the cast are utterly badass. The ending is such a cliffhanger and I cannot wait to find out what happens in the second one, if there's a second one, and I'm hoping there's a second one because the first one was so good. It's made me want to pick up the comic again. I've also got the second volume now, so I'm desperate now to read the second volume because it's just so good and I really cannot wait to see more from these characters. And I just generally really love this film. It's absolutely brilliant. It is very bloody and gory, so if that's not your thing, I would say stay away from it. But if you like action films with a bit of blood and gore, definitely watch this because it is amazing. I then went on to watch Guardians of the Galaxy as well because why not? It was not on TV. It was actually on TV a couple of days after I watched it, and I kind of skipped it for once in my life, and that's only because I'd watched it like 2 days beforehand. But I still thoroughly enjoy this film. I think it's hilarious. I genuinely love it. I fall in love with the characters all over again every single time I watch it, and I just love Guardians. And the final thing I watched on New Year's Eve was The Night Manager. I got the first 4 episodes done on New Year's Eve itself and finished it off on New Year's Day, and I still love this series. I watched it when it aired the first time around in like 2016, and then a couple of months later I think I watched it again, and I haven't watched it since, and I loved it. It popped up on the iPlayer, so we decided to give it another go while it was on the iPlayer, and absolutely loved it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I love the twists and turns of it. I love how tense it was the whole way through. It was absolutely brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed it and cannot recommend it enough if you love thrillers. As for what I was listening to basically the same thing I was in November, which is McFly's Young Dumb Thrills, because why would I listen to anything else right now? I haven't had a new McFly album in 10 years. I'm making the most of Young Dumb Thrills. I'm playing it to death and just loving it, doing it, quite frankly. So that is basically the only thing I was listening to for the entirety of December. And that's absolutely everything that I watched and listened to in December. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up. Comment down below with what you were watching and listening to in December. I'd love to know. I'll also leave a link down below to all of my social media if you want to check it out, including to the Comic Book Sanctum, which is my website dedicated to Marvel Comics. And if you want to see any more of my videos, please click subscribe here. And over here will be the link to my previous video. But until next time, everyone, bye!